Hello and welcome to another Random Code stream. Today we're going to be doing some analyzer stuff. So let me get my background audio going. And this is the issue that I'm going to be working on. So this isn't a library that I have called Transpire. It's a library that I basically use to illustrate and show how do you build an analyzer, a code fix, a refactoring. I have a source generator example in Rocks. And there's like one or two other projects that I have an example that I can use when I do presentations. So that's kind of why this project or this repository is here. It's more a vehicle of examples, but I want to have, I think, decent-ish examples in it. So I keep expanding upon it and finding things here and there that are somewhat off the beaten path, but I think also a little valid as well. Like there's one in there that will catch if you're typing. Let's see if I can. Oh, I'll get to that in a moment. Okay, because I have a different solution up here. But it will find things like new GUID, which gives you an empty GUID, and that's probably not what you meant. You want to say GUID.new GUID. So you'll find that, offer up a diagnostic, and then offer up a code fix to change it for you. By the way, I woke up this morning, I'm like, why is my throat a little sore? And yesterday I was feeling just a little bit congested, not bad. Today I am as well. And then it's like, oh yeah, that's right. There's, I think we're under a air quality hazard because it seems like every year in the last 4 or 5 years, Canada gets wildfires and then that smoke just drifts through into our area. And I think that's what's happening right now. So it's yeah, definitely feeling it in the throat this morning. So, but when my wife and I, when we were out last night and driving around, it's like, yeah, definitely is. There's a haze to the area. You can see it. So anyway, so that's what I'm going to work on. I want to show this thing first because I mentioned this yesterday on Blue Sky, and it's basically, I want to make sure that I think I hit the wrong button. Yeah. I want to make sure that it just keeps repeating. And I don't think by what I did, I actually played one song and it would just keep repeating that. Anyway, so I mentioned this on Blue Sky yesterday. This is it's actually a .NET tool. So it's an executable wrapped up as a NuGet package, which so a lot of people don't know that you can do. And I think I call it like an unsung hero, because if you want to build these utilities, you can just package them up, ship them into NuGet, and then everything just installs and runs and it works. So what this does, and I've got this executable locally pointed basically to itself, so it can analyze files in the project itself. Hey, Bug. So if I run this, you'll see a bunch of stuff flying by. And so what it's doing is it's looking for any CS file in, I think it's this direct. No, I think I got it pointing at this directory. So it looks through all of the files there that could possibly exist that are CS files. It doesn't do it on a project or solution basis. I might put that, actually I should put that in as an option, is to point it at a solution file and then have it give you all the projects, and you get all the documents, and then get the CS files that way if you want to analyze it that way. This just says give me a directory. It goes through all the directories, subdirectories, finds CS files, and what it's trying to do is find basically these things and how many times they occur. And the reason why is because in C#10 there was a new feature added called a global using. And so you could say, using system.io abstractions, put that in as a global using, and then you wouldn't have to put the using in your code if you're going to use something from that namespace. So that's actually great in some ways, because you may have noticed in recent history in C# with the project system that you don't have to type. For example, if I say var(x) is equal to new list of string, it just works, is because in the SDK type here, there's a default set of global usings, and one of them is, wait, make sure I close this out correctly. One of them is system collections generic. And so you don't have to do that extra little piece of work up here to put it in there. It's not hard, but it's not one less thing to do. The thing you have to be just a little careful about is if you put too many global usings in and you start having collisions with types, like a type has the same name within a namespace, those are two unique types. But if both usings exist in your code and you just type the type name, you'll get an ambiguous error because it doesn't know which one it is. So then you have to explicitly put the whole namespace plus the name as the type name in your code. So you don't want to just make everything a global using either. So this tool gives you some analysis information. It looks through all the files, and then it'll tell you down at the bottom what you're actually using. So you can use this. I keep saying use. You can use this, and in this case, it's not like a big deal. If I pointed at a different project, I could use that to say, well, maybe there's a namespace that we use a lot in our code. And maybe it makes sense to make that into a global using, and then we don't have to have that in every one of our files. So it's a little tool that I built, and I just updated it for .NET 9, and I also updated it. So it's using this thing called System I/O abstractions. So this is a way to basically have a one-to-one mapping to a whole bunch of types in the System I/O namespace, but they're virtualized, they're abstract, they're using interfaces, because that way you can use tests and mock things out in your tests. And then in the real world, like here, I can say the thing I'm going to pass into this call is this implementation of iFilesystem. And then you can get your new directory, and that gives you an iDirectory info. And I've always heard of this library, and I've never tried it, so I thought I'd give this a whirl here and give it a try. And I kind of like it. It took a little bit to get used to. The thing that really threw me is that on their GitHub page, they say you want to use like testable, the testable IO library, because this could be a little confusing. It may, because it's got system in front, it may think, oh, this is a system library, which it really isn't. The thing with the libraries is if you try to use the testable one from NuGet, I could not get this to work. It's like the file system type was not available. If I did this, and more to the point, I actually referenced this library instead of the testable one, then it worked. So that took a little bit of time to figure out how do I get this all to work. The nice thing though now is that in the code for this, everything is interface based, and then I could actually start writing tests around my stuff. And not that one, this one. And yep, I'm using rocks. I'm using my own library to do mocking because I wanted to try that out as well. And it was kind of fun to, again, eat your own dog food, try your own stuff out, see how it works. And kind of ended up working out nicely-ish. Some of the code gets a little long, but not too bad. And then again, all of it's virtualized. And there are things that they have in, dry throat. In System I/O abstractions, I think they have like testable things so that you can use their own little mocks of this stuff. But I wanted to use my library and give it a try. So yeah, that was kind of a fun endeavor. Speaking of fun endeavors, let's get into fixing this thing. So this is not a fix, but this is way back. And you gotta remember, I'm old. And I remember times in .NET, the first release of .NET 1.0 did not have generics. That was added in 2.0. And that story is interesting in and of itself because you find out later through the people that worked at Microsoft and the ones that were championing. Actually, Don Snyme, the guy who was behind F#, was the one that designed the generic system and the generic types in .NET. And there's a lot of discussion going on internally whether this was actually worth it, whether the way they were doing it was the right way. And it in retrospect, it was such a good decision for them to do it. That's like, I've always said, if there's one feature that you just could not pry out of my fingers in C# is generics. To try to code without it would feel just absolutely bizarre. So the thing though is that there was 3 years where we didn't have generic types. And so there were things like ArrayList, hash table, queue that are not generic. They're under system collections, not system collections generic. And the fact is nobody uses these anymore. You're highly discouraged from doing it. But as far as I could always tell, there's nothing that currently exists, at least in the .NET analyzers, that I could say var stuff is equal to new ArrayList. And it pops in using system collections at the top. But if I run the build, you'll say it succeeded. And, there's no, other than the spell, because deregionize is not a word, nothing shows up. Not even a warning, not even a suggestion to say what I should really do is probably say list of string, like that. So again, nobody is doing this anymore. Nobody's teaching this, or at least they shouldn't. Nobody's telling you to use these non-generic types. But I thought, as an exercise and an education into how do you do this, I think it'd be kind of cool to just build another analyzer to say, hey, we can't build a code fix, because to say I want you to turn an array list into a list of what? Object? A list of string? A list of GUIDs? A list of customers? That could get, like, how do you determine that in code? But at least tell people, hey, don't use this thing. And what I'm going to focus on first is just when you do an object construction operator, when you're trying to actually create a new of one of these, rather than are you deriving from one of them, because that could be, again, if I go to var stuff and I say new array list, I think, it's not sealed, so you can derive from it. I could also at some point put in code to say if you're defining a type and one of the things that you're deriving from somewhere in your inheritance hierarchy is one of these types, you shouldn't do that either. We're going to focus on the first thing first. So again, this is not something that's pressing. People don't do this anymore. You may stumble across it if there's been code that's been created from decades gone by and it still exists today. You may still run into this, but it's something that should definitely be discouraged if anybody's even trying to use it. There's just no reason to use those anymore. I'm surprised that, in some ways, Microsoft hasn't obsoleted them from maybe not .NET Framework, but from like modern .NET, and said they just don't exist anymore. And I get there's this backwards compatibility thing that you don't want to break people on, but nobody uses them. Get rid of them. Don't even have them exist anymore. Put a warning on them. Say to people, stop it. But that doesn't happen right now. Anyway, so that's what I'm going to work on in this stream and maybe a future random code string, depending upon how far we get. Should also put in here, I could also look for type definitions and see if the type is deriving from one of these base non-generic types. Okay, and I should also point out that if I say here var stuff is equal to new list of string, and I go to this type, you're going to see that it still derives from some of these non-generic interfaces. And that's also backwards compatibility. So like I list of t derives from I enumerable. Also I enumerable of t. This is because back then they had this kind of, we want it to be generic, but we still have to somehow make it non-generic. I don't know. I don't remember the reason why they had it also be non-generic. I think they should have just went all in and made them just generic types only, but they didn't. I don't know why, but they didn't. So to say that you can't use like the non-generic interfaces, that is something I'm not really looking at yet, because that comes up still in scenarios today where you're forced to use them. And I don't want to stop people from doing that, but creating them or deriving from those base types like ArrayList, queue, those concrete types, not interfaces, that I want to discourage. You shouldn't be using those. All right. So let's actually get a branch going. Oh, something else I looked at too recently is, what was the first thing I ever did in GitHub? And it was back in 2011. And I opened up an issue on a library called MonoCecil, which is a IL or intermediate language weaver and reader and writer of assemblies. It's a lower level tool. And I put out an issue there. That was the first thing I ever did on GitHub 14 years ago. And that's funny because I looked at, well, what was the next thing I did? I didn't do anything in GitHub for 2 years after that. I didn't just, I don't remember when I started really using Git, but I think it was somewhere around 2013, 2015, somewhere around there. And it's funny because I initially resisted it. And things that I've noticed in my career, things that I kind of resist, for whatever reason, I end up liking. Especially if people have, oh, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread type of view on technology. If I look at that, and I always have a little bit of a skepticism to it, but Git is held up. It's I hate using the phrase de facto standard, but it kind of fits here. I haven't been on a project that's used for source control anything but Git in a long time. I'd say at least in a decade. I haven't used Subversion or Mercurial, or I'm trying to think of other ones that might even exist out there. There's others, but I've just used Git. So, and I like it. It actually made branches make sense. Like, I never liked branches in source control systems until Git, because it actually worked. It worked well. So yeah. Anyway, we got a branch out there, and I've also reorganized this project recently so that there are separate projects for the analyzers. That's an analysis, just like what I did on rocks recently, and completions. That's where the code fixes, and I don't have any refactorings, but they would go here as well. There's also a tiny piece of shared code between the two, and what I did is this one trick. There's a thing in .NET that you can use, what's called a shared project. And so what a shared project is that it doesn't actually compile. It doesn't do I don't think it actually does any analysis. Well, that will do like syntactic analysis. You should have a semicolon there. I don't know if it actually does anything with you can't actually edit the file, which is weird. But a shared project basically says this. You can think of it as like a partial project. It has types that you actually need to include into a real project for them to be compiled. And so what I did is I put these identifiers and stuff that I need in both analysis and completions in here, and then both those projects reference that as a shared project. Okay. And then they get compiled in. So you're duplicating code in both of them, but that's far easier than for me to try to figure out in the package, how do I get the package to distribute a project that both of them need? And that if it starts getting more complicated, like there's a case in rocks where I may need to do that, where both sides of the equation need to share some code, it may start becoming worth it to find out, how do I make another project that both of them reference that ends up working so that they're being shared correctly. Anyway, so what I need to do is go into Transpire analysis and put in a new analyzer. So we're going to call this Discourage non-generic collection usage. We're going to call this creation analyzer. Let's discourage non-generic collection creation. So this is the thing of, let's not let people actually try to create one of these. Okay. Defines object creation using types from such as like that. Okay. Whoops. So then we need a couple of things. Support diagnostics and initialize. This will actually have something in here. And we'll just copy pasta this code. This is kind of the boilerplate stuff that you need to do. Why is that? Okay. This is something that came up in a user group that I was asking some questions about with the way that my analyzer was getting configured. And I want to see what this does. So these RS analyzers here, these are analyzers that analyze your analyzers, which is funny, but actually helpful because it encourages you to put the right things in, like enable concurrent execution of your analyzer. Okay, so I'll say generate this. Okay, cool. I'll say enable concurrent execution. Awesome. You know, so I already have all those here. But you may also notice that over here I say none. The default is to put this in here. What you really should do is put in none. And the reason why you should put in none is this is basically saying, you know, I guess in the case of source generators or something, that you can analyze all source generated code or something like that. And you own all creation of source generators. And that's never the case. So what you're supposed to do is put in none. But why doesn't it do that as a default? And I asked that question. I really didn't get a good answer on that one. So let's do this. Okay, now the supported diagnostics, we're going to need a rule. Right, and our rule here is going to be a descriptor okay, so we can make this static. This is just a pattern that I follow with what I'm doing. So now we need descriptor identifiers. This is in the shared code. And you'll notice that I'm ordering these by name, not by the value. I'm going to change this, even though my style is to be somewhat strict on how I order things. There's always exceptions, and this is one of them. I'd rather this be ordered by the order of the ID in the identifier for the descriptor rather than the name of these things. And then I can go, oh, now I've, like the highest number is 17. I can put 18 in there, you know. So let me just do that real quick. So I'm going to put 4, 2, 3, 1. This would have been an interesting trick to see if Copilot could have hey, Copilot, change all this for me and do it right and assume that, you know, this is this. But by the time I would get there with that, I kind of think I would have already got this done. I don't know. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. See, we're missing, no, there's the 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Okay, so now we want a... And this will be 18. 18. And that's going to go here. And this is going to be that. And this is going to be that. And that. And that. And we want this to be... I think it should be an error. I don't think that we'd really want anything else to be using these things. I think it's pretty much an error in my book. Using non-generic collections should be avoided. That's also something I need to do as another thing. Actually, let me get my notes up on that. Not Notepad. Code. I want to put in to-dos here. Put in an issue to ensure all Transpire documentation is updated. Okay, and then is there something else I wanted to do? I don't think so. But that was definitely one that came to mind. Okay. So we've got that. Got that. Close this. Close that. So this should be Discourage descriptor. And then copy pasta some code. This is all boilerplate. So I just get to where I need to go. So this now at least has the analyzer defined with the right descriptor rule and everything else. Okay. Now we get into the meat of what we want to do. We want to kind of copy from find new GUID via constructor, which is kind of what we want to do here. Not the descriptor. We want the actual analyzer. And I think what we do is we end up this is the datetime one. I want to look at the GUID one. Not that it kind of matters. So here what we're doing is we're finding the type by the metadata name. And if we can actually get that, which we should in all cases, then we're looking for a constructor on all of them, or a constructor that takes no parameters. And then this is a minor thing about does create version 7 exist. But then we want to look at a creation operation. And what we want to do is look at the constructor. And is this constructor, which is a method symbol, is it the same as the GUID's new constructor? We don't need to necessarily do that. What we want to do is catch when we're doing object creation operations. But we want to say, like on context invocation here, Oh, not, we can't do it here. If we say it here, just to illustrate this, I think there is a declaring, there's an iMethod symbol. Returns a symbol associated with the method. Returns a method symbol that this method was constructed from. Containing type. That's what I was looking for. I don't know why I was showing it. But that's what we want to use. And then say, does that containing type match any of the ones that we were looking for? So it's going to be a little bit different of a lookup, but we should get there. I'm probably going to go on for about another half an hour here. Get some more coffee going. The weather's actually really nice outside. We're finally getting consistent warm weather. I think it's going to be in the 80s Fahrenheit. I don't know what that is in Celsius, but starting to get pretty warm, and now I'm going to start going on more bike rides. So that's what I want to do before lunch today. And then I'm going to play some Hollow Knight. All right. So let's go back to ours here. And what we want to do is kind of this, but we're going to twist it around. Compilation context does not register any analyze. Oh, because, well, we don't have that here. All right, so what we want to do is we want to say var collection types is equal to, and we're going to get a whole bunch of these. So for example, we're going to have ArrayList. That's one of them. And we'll just do that for now. Okay. Oh yeah, there's no target type for this. Darn it. We can do iName type symbol. New list of iNamed type symbol. And then we can. And now this is giving a possible null. Yeah. So. I wish collection types or lists had a add if. Add if not null. We can just do this for now to get it to shut up. Oh, but you want to do that. Okay. So I'll figure out the thing why it does this is it's saying, well, what happens if you don't find this? This would be really weird to not find these kinds of types. Excuse me. So what I want to do is let's try to find all of them. So there's a bit array. That's actually a little different. That's a compact array of bit values. That's potentially a little different. What's this? For a strongly typed collection. Yeah, but if you look at like ArrayList, I don't think it derives from. Yeah, it doesn't even derive from those. We want things that are actually. I don't care about compare. Yeah, like hash table. We don't want people to use that one. And I'll clear out the full namespace in a moment. You can use, yeah, get there. You can use Copilot Agent. Yeah, I know. So we're at hash. There's a queue. Is read-only collection? That's an abstract one. Sorted list. Yeah, we don't want that one. I think a stack is another one. And then we don't want... Provides objects for performing a structural comparison of two collection objects. Never even heard of that. We're going to stick with this for now, and just, if we need to expand upon it, we can. So now what we want to do is we've got all the types that we're looking for, and then we basically want to register an action off of those. And the thing that we want to register is on this type here. And we want a method that we're going to clean up in a moment. The operation, we want to pass in the list of collection types, and I don't think we need this. So we can just do collection types. Okay, so now that hooks us into saying, hey, we want to know when a object creation or a new instance has been made of something. We want to be notified of that. Okay. So now in here, we're going to take that. Actually, can we pass in a comparator here? No, but we could use, I think, a hash set. And then symbol equality compare default. Okay. There. And then we'll make this make a hash set out of this. And now what we want to do is we'll grab that, say that's the context invocation, and we want to say if collection types contains the context invocation containing type. Is this a, yeah, it's, we'll be a little bit defensive here and say is not null, and there. So now if you actually contain this type, that means you're trying to create one of these. And then what we can do is report our diagnostic. And that's it. We'll put in the rule here. That's the location of it. We don't need this properties thing. That was... And then one more, and we're done. Easy peasy. Of course, we need to write tests, right? So, oh, now we don't need this up here anymore. We can take that off. All right. So, testing time. Let's write some tests. Okay, that's actually a little surprising. What you're like, what am I looking at that's like bothering me? The thing I'm looking at here is no, I don't, that's not what I meant. I want to go far enough back in history. I thought I had on tests and analyzer and code fix tests. Oh, that's right. The way I do this is that I actually, in the tests here, I tested supported diagnostics. That's right. Okay. Okay. Which is sort of testing out the, yeah, it's kind of, I should have individual tests for, I'll write that down as a to-do. Create individual tests for the descriptors. That's boring to watch. I'm not going to do that here. Let's get rid of that, get rid of that. We want to have something called tests, static class, and then we can use find. Actually, let's use the datetime one because that's not using that create version 7 stuff. So we want to have a test here that's basically saying nothing should be flagged, right? Oh, that's right. I need to do this. I should change that. Yeah, nothing. Another thing for the to-do list. Get rid of putting in every test. There's a way to do that. I should save that as my notes file. Okay. So if I go to my repos here, docs, notes. There. Okay. All right, coming back here. So this should pass. Nothing should happen. That's wrong. Good. Analyze when generic collection is made. So I want to just using system collections generic. So in here, we're going to do var stuff is equal to new list a string. Useless code, return stuff dot count. Right, because, yeah, that's right. Okay. Put a little space in there. But the point is we want to make sure that we're catching this correctly. And in this case, we shouldn't be catching it because it's perfectly valid. And that's good. Okay. Oh, I should be putting in the right analyzer. So now in this case, we want to say new ArrayList. And I believe if you do this, yes, same thing. Except now they threw up collections here. So this should flag it. How do we flag it? Around. So we're using that syntax. Okay. What do you do? Hey! Would you look at that? It passed. Nice. So what this is showing here is that, and hopefully get the scenarios project to pick this up, but this is showing that you can actually get this to be flagged as an error now, which is awesome. I love Roslyn. So let's do a hash table. When ArrayList. me check something out here. Var x is equal to new hash set. What is it? Hash table. X dot count. Q. X dot count. Actually, if you're wondering why, I want to make this a parameterized test, so I don't have to keep making new ones. I can make it a little bit smaller. So we can actually silly, but let's just do that. Make it simple. Everything is a hash code, right? Okay, so wait, we are, that's fine. Okay, so why did that? Oh, okay. Let's make sure that our tests are all still running. No, one failed. Mismatch between a, what did it return here? Cannot implicitly convert type into string. Oh. Well, fine. There. And we'll just call it make. It doesn't matter. We're making a hash code. It's the usage of the type that. So now we want to say analyze when non-generic collection is made. And so we want to make this a test case of passing in ArrayList. Okay, and so now we need string type name. And so then we're going to put that right there. And so now when I run this, we should get one passing. But then if I come over here and I get hash table, two pass. Nice. So we can just put in all of our ones that we expect. We're going to have two more. A sorted list. Sorted, not sorted. Not like bad. And we have 5. Nice. Nice. Why is it barking here? Hash table. Like, shut up. Okay. So these all pass. We should now just run all the tests. We get all in the pass. So let's commit that work. Got the analyzer tests in place. There's still one that I need to copy pasta from here. It's this one. Let's get that one knocked out. So we want to do that. Should be 1. This should be Discourage. That one. should be descriptor, scriptor. I think we said error, yep. Is enabled. Discourage. Wait, did I just, yeah, okay. Run this, and that passes. Good. Okay, so we got that one in place. Last thing I want to do for now is let's bring up scenarios and let's see if we can get this to come up. Using non-generic collections. As you can see here, we've got a number of scenarios that we want to show up and say, well, they're not now. Because Visual Studio sucks. Like it should be flagging these as, actually, wait a minute. I do have these as set up. I did change this. All right. Yeah, it's just not picking these up. And they're project. Oh, well, this one we can remove because, yeah. Oh, do I need to reference those as actual projects? Probably. Maybe. Well, it caught that one for some bizarre reason. It is showing him here now, though. That's good. Okay. No, don't pin that. It's clean. Let's reload it. Yes, new expression can be simplified. I don't want it to be simplified. But we do see that these are showing up down here. I don't know why they're not showing up in the list, but that's okay. All right. So let's come into here and let's just have a public static class. Public static int sum counts, because that's stupid. Var array list collection equals new array list, and then we want to return array list collection count. But then if we put in like a queue collection, plus queue collection count. What this should do right here. So it's not putting the error in there, but it is showing up here. Again, this is just a little bug with, or not bug, but just an annoyance with how Visual Studio loads projects and does things. But it is picking it up, which is good. You can, that's the thing I got highlighted in the output there. And it is, I think, grabbing, that's 929 to 944. So that's 929 to 944. That'd be the right thing there. So that's awesome. We could have some non-generic counts, and then we could also have kind of showing the correct way of doing it. So we can have a list collection, a list of string, and we could have a queue of string, and add those two together. And then if we build that, we should see still only 2. I really want it to show up as this. Let's go back into the actual Transpire project. And do we need anything more on the tests? I don't think so. Other than what I said is to put in the documentation for it. But some of these things are kind of... Oh, I already did that. Like the documentation, that's kind of boring. I don't want to do that in this stream. Yeah, I think this one's done. What I might do in another stream, I'm not sure because I'm almost done with this, was the actual... If you make a type declaration. Yeah, maybe I'll make that another stream. Is to have a analyzer that says Discourage non-generic collection. I don't know what I call it. Type definition usage. Long name, but it would be clear as to what it is. Let's actually put that in there before I forget. Discourage. Type declaration usage analyzer. Stops people from doing public class stuff which derives from ArrayList. We want to catch those concrete types used in inheritance hierarchies. There. All right, I'll do that in the future, in a future stream. For this one, I'm going to stop for now because I'm pretty happy with where this went. So git commit, 23 added notes, and more tests. Cool. Cool beans, cool beans, cool beans. I'm happy with how this went. And again, the thing that when I do a talk on Roslyn and I talk about analyzers and code fixes and refactoring and source generators and all this stuff, the reason why I still do it is because it's so powerful, you know. And once you get into it, most of building this type up was very boilerplate, you know. Where it started to become specific is in this compilation start action and in this code, you know, but that's it. And it doesn't take that much to say, hey, I want to find when these types are used, specifically when they're being created. And when they're being created, if a invocation exists that it's one of these types, flag it as an error, you know. Great timing for me. Sorry, Dusty. Just, yeah. I'm almost done with this stream. Apologize, but it's just timing. But again, the reason why I like all this stuff from Roslyn is because you can do so much to find things, look for things, build code, and have it all be part of the compilation process. I was watching a video from Anders Heilsberg, which if you don't know who Anders Heilsberg is, he's basically the creator of Delphi. That was a tool way back in the 90s. It was one of the client server types of tools that also competed with Visual Basic and Power Builder. And so he was building Delphi, and I think Delphi used Pascal if I remember right. And then he was hired by Microsoft, and he basically worked on and built and designed C# and was on that for a while. And then he moved, I think about 10 years ago, and started to move over to TypeScript. And so he's been basically I don't know what his official title is, but the lead designer person on TypeScript. And recently TypeScript announced that they were moving their compiler, instead of it being written in TypeScript, like C#'s compiler is written in C#. Lots of programming languages have their compiler written in their language. Once you get that bootstrapped, you can start, compiling your language with your language. And TypeScript has always been built, the compiler has always been built in TypeScript. Well, they've noticed that over time, and projects get bigger and bigger in TypeScript, that the compiler was just not cutting it. The workloads and the way that JavaScript runs, because that's essentially what TypeScript compiles to at the end of the day, is just not meant for those compute CPU intensive workloads. And it also doesn't do parallelization well at all. And that's what you really need with a compiler. So they said they pushed it far enough, and they said we just can't push it any farther. We need to actually start getting into a different way to build the compiler, so that we can get what Anders calls embarrassingly simple parallelization, which you get a lot of in compilation. And so again, look up this video. It's on YouTube. It was one of the build from Microsoft's build conference video, or the series of videos that they published. Anyway, he talks about, and this was mentioned months ago, that they're moving towards building their compiler now in Go. And they explain why did they pick Go over something like Rust or C#, which they said, you think, why? That was one of the things that came out. It's like, why did they pick Go over C#? Is Microsoft abandoning C#? People want to make drama over the stupidest things. He showed that, they did look at C# and they said there would have been some advantages with it. One of the problems with C# is that while it's cross-platform, its native cross-platform story is still, it's getting better. There's a lot with what they've done with native ahead-of-time compilation, which allows you to target a specific architecture. Like, I want my .NET code to run specifically for Windows or Linux or whatever. When you build .NET code, it can run on those different architectures, but it's not natively run. You still have this little bit of abstraction that the jitter has to do with your code and figure out how to actually get that into the machine code for that OS, or the processor, but running for that OS, if you know what I mean. Doing AOT native compilation allows you to target, your code targets it natively when it does that compilation process. So .NET has done some pretty good gains in that recent history, but it's still not quite there. He said the real thing that they wanted to do is basically, I think he said call it a port, but they wanted to take as much of their TypeScript code and move it over to Go or whatever language they were going to use and make that as efficient and clean as possible. They already had a compiler with a lot of code in it, and they didn't want to take that and have to basically restructure everything. They said Go maps to TypeScript and how they write their TypeScript for the compiler pretty naturally. And I was like, that makes sense. I mean, then why wouldn't you do that? And I don't know, old man rambling. Why did I get on that point? But yeah, I mean, you kind of have to use the tools and the things you want to do for compilation. But it's just interesting that TypeScript actually now is going to be compiled with an executable that is written in Go, not in TypeScript itself. So yeah, interesting ramblings about compilation. With that, though, I'm going to stop the stream because I'm happy with where things are at with this. And the next random code stream that I probably do will be doing the thing I just mentioned, which is to make sure that if you're declaring a type, you're not deriving from one of these concrete types. Again, we don't care about iList or IEnumerable, the non-generic versions of those, because you still kind of have to do that. It's if you would derive from one of these types. We don't want you to do that, and we want to discourage that as well. So that's what I'm going to do in the next one. If you've been watching and you haven't subscribed to the channel just yet, please do so. I would greatly appreciate it. Getting closer to 1,000, the more the better. So any new subscription helps. Upcoming schedule, I'm going to be doing a couple, at least one, maybe two streams this afternoon and evening where I'm going to be playing Hollow Knight and keep moving in that game. And I'll also be doing that Tuesday and Thursday this week as well. I may do a coding stream sometime during the week, maybe, depending. I leave for a business trip on Sunday and I'll be gone all next week, so I won't be doing any streaming. I should mention that. But I think my flight, when does my flight leave? When does it leave on Sunday? Not this Sunday, next Sunday. Come on. Let's go look at this. Let's go look at that. Yeah, I probably won't do a stream on next Sunday because I don't want to cut it short. I don't want to be cutting it close. I have like TSA pre and stuff, so I can get through pretty quickly. But I'd rather just focus on getting to the airport and not have to worry about anything coming up. So I will probably not be doing a stream next Sunday, but I'll try to get another one in either sometime this week or Saturday morning for a coding stream. So with that, I'm going to stop this stream. Thank you all for watching. Take care, and I hope to see you in the future.